Good evening, everyone. And it's that time of year again where everybody loves to play the game. Are you ready for the madness? March Madness! That's right. We're talking about the March Madness get-together. Now, is it going to be high school style? It is going to be the blast of college style. I even got the college brackets in my room. Well, do I see a Cinderella team in this mix? I mean, Gonzaga, everyone says Gonzaga is the best team there is. Since Indiana 1976 Indiana team. I gotta give it to them. They look like a pretty damn good team. Only problem, who do they gotta play? They either got Norfolk State or Appalachian State. I gotta say, I've filled out part of my bracket. I haven't filled it all out yet. I got two different brackets. I kind of went the other way on all of them, but I picked Gonzaga until they played Iowa on one bracket, and then they got upset. And if they do win it all, this would be the first time in their history, well, not just their history, well, it would be the first time in their history to ever win a title, but this would be the first time since 1976 a team has gone undefeated by winning an NCAA tournament. But, however, I would look forward to seeing a challenge from other teams, such as Creighton, or Virginia, or Ohio. I see some challenges in them, but then again, I really don't see much of a challenge from Ohio if Ohio gets that far. But you never know. USC, and then Wichita State, Drake, I don't know. I mean, Kansas, they're pretty good. There's a lot of good talent in those teams. Grand Canyon, average losses are very small margin. I look for them to give Iowa fits. Even that could be an upset. They could even upset Iowa. So, anything's possible here. Even Oregon could upset VCU. Eastern Washington, they had some pretty good games, but they didn't really play anybody. But then again, anything's possible. At least that's in the West. Now Michigan. Obviously, they got beat by Ohio State, surprisingly, by a point. So it knocked them out of the tournament, the Big Ten tournament. So they're out. But they continued, so they stayed number one. They get either Mount St. Mary's or Texas Southern. Two good teams. It seems like Texas Southern is the one. And there it goes. St. Bonaventure and LSU. Two good teams. Two valuable records. 16-4 St. Bonaventure versus a 18-9 LSU. A team from the SEC, you think, good. But St. Bonaventure, they seem pretty good. But part of me says I'd have to go with LSU. Why? Because they played a lot more physical teams and they've beaten some physical teams. Now, Colorado and Georgetown. The surprise of the century is Georgetown. But then again, Colorado, on the other hand, is also a surprise. But I think the biggest surprise of them all is Georgetown. But I wouldn't look past Georgetown one bit. I'd be surprised if Georgetown pulls off the upset. I would not be surprised if they do. Why? Because one reason why you don't want to be surprised about Georgetown. One, Georgetown is more complex. They started the season off 3-8. Looked like they were just gonna fold it up and just call it a season, like it was all gonna be dead. Like they were just gonna be dead. And lo and behold, what happens? They opened up a can of whoop ass on teams and actually started beating them like they didn't even exist. And lo and behold, they made it to the Big East Championship, tied at 12, and they won another game. Actually, not Big East. I can't remember which league it was. Just shows you how old I'm getting. And then become 13 and 12. And then you got Florida State versus North Carolina Greensboro. Again, 16 and 6 versus a 21 and 8. Two talented teams, with two different aspirations. One who's played some talented teams and lost to some talented teams, but also beaten some talented teams that were quality talented teams. While the other, not really talented teams, but really not very big games or really quality. On the other hand, you have some. Then you got BYU, who's 26, will either take on Michigan State, who's 15 and 12, taking on a UCLA team who's 17 and 9. Now, with that being said, UCLA has split against teams, so has Michigan State. They beat Ohio State and lost to Ohio State. They beat Michigan and lost to Michigan. There's a lot of things about them. They're very unpredictable. I think they beat Illinois and lost to Illinois. I'm not really sure. I gotta look at that. But they're just all over the place. They're one of those teams that are just like Georgetown. The only difference is they're not like Georgetown. They started out strong, but then they kind of fell apart. Then they kind of ended like how Georgetown began. Like Georgetown, who started out strong, who started out weak, and just ended strong. Then we got UCLA, who was just kind of like in there, just kind of winning one, lose one, win one, lose one. But then you go on a win streak, then you go on a lose streak. That kind of thing. And then you get Texas versus Abilene Christian. That's going to be a good game. Especially as many turnovers as Abilene Christian has forced. 20 turnovers. That's pretty good. Now Texas, on the other hand, they're on a whole new level. They're not the same level of competition as what Abilene Christian is used to playing. But then again, who knows? Texas could easily win it. But now we go on to our next level. Then we go on our next game, Connecticut versus Maryland. Who knows? Maryland can easily pull it off. I mean, they're 16 and 13. I mean, I gotta say, Maryland, they beat Illinois, which is surprisingly, they actually beat Illinois by 2 points. Then Alabama, who is pretty darn good, surprisingly this year, they're good for this year. They take on 12 and 5 Iona under head coach Rick Pitino. Surprisingly, he's back. I look for that to be an interesting game, considering you got a coach who once coached at Louisville, and he's back at a different school, bringing a school that was once in the dumps back to its new normal, back to a new reality, back to a different reality. And Iona's one of those schools who once was really good, and they fell off into a deep sleep for a long time, and now they come back out of their sleep hole and are playing again, are playing good again. But now the question is, do they have what it takes to beat a very good Alabama team like that? We'll have to find out. But now it's over to the South bracket. We have Baylor, who's 22 and 2, taking on a very good Baylor team, taking on a Hartford team who's 15 and 8. That's going to be a good game, hands down. But I see Baylor advancing past Hartford, unless Baylor has some kind of magic coming out of their pocket. Now, North Carolina versus Wisconsin. Almost the same length amount of losses each team has. North Carolina is 18 and 10. Wisconsin 17 and 12. Wisconsin, I think they beat Illinois. One of their wins was against Illinois. I gotta look at that. I mean, North Carolina, they've had a lot of losses against teams that were there and that were talented. And they also beat some talented teams like Duke. But then again, Duke didn't even make the tournament, so I don't know what to say there. So, where do we go from there? I don't know. I don't know which team to pick. That's a tough one. Then we got Villanova and Winthrop. Villanova 16-6 versus a 23-1 Winthrop. That's a tough one. You got one team that's only lost one game, and that was by only 2 points. A last-second shot, I gotta say, not overtime. I mean, this might be a game where it comes down to the last second like that, or it just might blow them out of the water. I mean, I don't know. We'll just have to see when the game is over with, when that game strikes 0. And then you got Purdue versus North Texas. 18-9 Purdue versus North Texas, who's 17-9. Literally almost the same exact record, except one more win for Purdue. Now, if you look at how Purdue played, they lost to Ohio State, which was their last loss. They beat them both times in the regular season. Now, what's the difference between this and that? It's plain and simple. They couldn't pull it through. Now, with that being said, there's a lot about them. Then you got North Texas, who played some very talented teams. Beat them, but yet they couldn't pull it through. And then there is Texas Tech versus Utah State. Texas Tech, very good. So is Utah State. Two very talented teams. They are very good teams. I see a very good one team. I most likely don't know which one I'd pick, but it's a very good game. I see a very talented team advancing. Then you have Arkansas versus a 22-6 Arkansas versus a 14-1 Colgate. Like, you brush your teeth? Well, that's going to be a tough one. Colgate, who's really good. Then you got Florida versus Virginia Tech. 14-9 Florida versus 15-6 Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech and Florida look like a pretty good game because Florida beat Alabama, I think. I mean, that's telling you a lot. But then again, what level do they have compared to Alabama? And where are they played compared to Alabama? And then you have Ohio State taking on Oral Roberts. 21-9 Ohio State taking on Oral Roberts, who is 16-10. Two good teams. Ohio State has had an up and down season. They played a lot of good non-conference. They beat Illinois, one of their top quality wins. And a lot of good other game wins. And let's see, who else is in the league running here? And then Illinois, speaking of Illinois, we got Illinois versus Drexel. Drexel, 12-7. New team. And then you have Illinois. Two good teams. Illinois will most likely win because they've played a lot more physical teams. But Drexel, they played some good teams. Loyola Chicago. That was one of those Cinderella teams a few years ago. That was a surprising team. Then you had Georgia Tech versus them. I wouldn't be surprised if Loyola Chicago goes a long ways. If they're one of those surprise teams. And then you have Georgia Tech. Then you have Oregon State versus Oklahoma State. That'll be a good game there. But something tells me that I think Oklahoma State might advance. I'm not sure. But then again, it's kind of weird how that works when you have Oregon State taking on who advanced all the way past them and got in, who won the Pac-12 championship, beat Oregon, who's only number 7, which is weird. Weird how that works. And then Liberty, 23-5, is number 13, taking on San Diego State, who is 23-4, but that's going to be some interesting game. Then Syracuse taking on West Virginia. West Virginia played some good teams. Lost to some. Kansas was a split. Oklahoma was a split. A few good teams in between there. Then Morehead State and Clemson. Actually, that was West Virginia, Morehead State. Morehead State is a pretty decent team, but I don't see them advancing. But then again, I could be wrong. This is really anybody's game. Clemson and Rutgers. Clemson is a very talented team, but Rutgers, even though they went 15-11, I don't know. I just don't know. Part of me wants Rutgers to pull this off, but the other part of me says I don't see Rutgers really going that far. I mean, where would you really go with this? Rutgers? Or would you go with Clemson? But then again, I really don't know. Then you got Houston and Cleveland Heights. 24-3 Houston versus Cleveland Heights, who's 19-7. I mean, one of their losses was to Ohio, badly, 101-46. And Ohio's over here in another bracket against Virginia. I mean, I really don't see them really going that far. I don't think they'll even get past Houston, but who knows, I could be wrong. We'll just have to see. Well, with that being said, I got some things I gotta do. We'll talk about Ohio's high school sports tomorrow night. With that being said, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Peace.